They called it the Erebus Swarm, a living tide of biomechanical horrors pouring from the edge of the galaxy. Entire civilizations vanished overnight. Fleets numbering in the thousands were consumed like sparks in a hurricane. Planetary shields folded in hours. The Galactic Council broadcast a single message on every frequency. All species prepare for extinction. It wasn't war. It was annihilation, silent and absolute. No one had ever faced something like this and survived. No one, except Earth. While other civilizations scrambled to fortify borders and amass fleets, Earth's response was unnervingly quiet. No massive armadas were deployed. No planetary evacuations. Instead, deep within the black levels of strategic command, 10 dossiers were unlocked. 10 faces, 10 code names, 10 legends, known only to the highest echelons of power. Each man had disappeared from public view decades ago. To the galaxy, they didn't exist. To Earth, they were the final move. The swarm's advance was relentless. Fortress systems fell in days. Entire battle fleets burned like kindling. The Council begged for Earth's fleets to join the defense lines. But Earth's representatives simply replied, "We're sending a team." The Council thought it was a mistranslation. A team against this? Surely Earth would commit entire Leviathan fleets like during the HFY War. But when the transmissions repeated the same words, the Council's fear deepened. Earth wasn't preparing. Earth was planning. High above Earth, in a station hidden within the magnetosphere, a transport ship detached silently from its cradle. It bore no insignia, no broadcasting beacon, no crew manifest. Inside, 10 men sat in silence, strapped into dark grav seats. No chatter, no nerves, just focus. Each of them had been chosen for a reason the galaxy couldn't comprehend. They weren't soldiers, they were weapons. And this wasn't their first impossible mission. Their leader, codename Atlas, stared at the holographic projection of the swarm's leading tendrils. His face was unreadable. Beside him, Ghost, infiltration and sabotage expert, ran silent diagnostics on a black ops device the size of a coin. Titan adjusted his exosuit, a walking fortress built around a single soldier. Each of the 10 men had a legend whispered in classified files, operations that never happened, enemies that ceased to exist, outcomes that shifted wars without fleets ever firing. The Erebus Swarm's vanguard broke through the first Council defense line near the Tarsis cluster. Billions screamed across subspace channels as planets were torn apart like paper. The Council deployed every ship it had left, and still the swarm advanced. Its core was a seething, star-sized intelligence, buried beneath layers of drones, hive ships, and living constructs. "They're not an army," Atlas said, studying the data. "They're an organism, and organisms have pressure points." The team's ship jumped to the black zone, a region no other species dared to enter. This was the approach vector the swarm used, a region of gravitational maelstroms and hyperspace rifts where fleets were torn apart before contact. But the 10 didn't travel with fleets. Their ship was built to slip between sensor layers like a ghost through fog. No beacon, no transponder, no light. For the first time, something moved toward the swarm without broadcasting fear. Back in the Council chambers, chaos reigned.
10 men,
shouted one delegate. "This is madness." Another spat, "Humans think themselves gods." But deep down they remembered Earth's history. The species that turned back invaders with a fraction of the strength. The species that dismantled empires not with armies, but with strategy. And some in quiet corners whispered, "If anyone can, it's them." As the ship approached the edge of the swarm's territory, the crew's implants synced. Mission data flooded their neural HUDs. Target zones, swarm structure, vulnerabilities extracted from decades of covert observation. Earth hadn't just watched the swarm arrive. They'd been waiting. Every movement, every feeding pattern, every hyperspace fold, catalogued. This wasn't desperation. This was a surgical strike at galactic scale. Atlas broke the silence. "We've got one shot," he said. "No backup. No reinforcements. Once we're in, we don't come back." The others nodded, no hesitation in their eyes. This wasn't bravado. It was routine. Earth didn't send armies to fight hopeless wars. They sent solutions. And as the ship disappeared into the gravitational storms ahead, the galaxy held its breath. 10 men were flying into the mouth of extinction. The Erebus swarm's perimeter wasn't guarded like a fortress. It was alive. Vast clouds of biomechanical drones drifted through the void, like shoals of predators, scanning, feeding, and folding into new patterns with eerie fluidity. No ship had ever breached this living barrier without being detected and consumed, but Earth's strike craft wasn't a normal ship. It drifted into the swarm's outer zone with engines cold and systems whisper quiet, its surface cloaked in adaptive metamaterial that mimicked the background radiation of deep space. Inside the cockpit, Ghost's hands moved in silent rhythm. He deployed a cascade of signal ghosts, micro-probes that replicated swarm drone signatures. Each one vanished into the darkness, confusing the hive's sensor net. "Ghost layer active," he murmured. Titan checked his weapon rig, a portable rail accelerator that could crack a frigate hull if needed. In the rear compartment, Cypher interfaced with encrypted channels, rewriting local gravitational telemetry to keep them invisible. This wasn't infiltration by stealth. It was infiltration by dominance of understanding. The ship slipped deeper. Ahead, titanic shapes loomed, living hive structures the size of moons, linked by luminous tendrils that pulsed with alien bioelectric light. The swarm's outer habitats were mobile ecosystems, birthing new drones every second. Most species would see this as an impenetrable wall. Atlas saw a map. "Pulse timing 4.3 seconds, Cypher said. "That's our entry window." Atlas didn't blink. "Then that's when we move." At the perfect interval between swarm pulses, the ship accelerated. It slid through the glowing tendrils like a blade through water, perfectly synchronized with the hive's rhythm. 1 second too early, they'd have been vaporized. 1 second too late, assimilated. Ghost's pulse dampeners hummed at critical intensity. Titan gripped his harness as gravitational spikes clawed at the hull. In the shadows of the living wall, 10 humans slipped through what billions of ships had died slamming against. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, they watched helplessly. Dozens of observation drones had been deployed, but the swarm's perimeter devoured them on contact. There was no feed, no signal, no updates. "They're gone," one alien delegate whispered. The council chair shook his head. "No, they're humans. That's different." It was not optimism, it was history speaking. The species that had turned impossible into routine was once again somewhere no one else could follow. Inside the swarm, the team switched to full blackout mode. No transmissions, no light. Their ship clamped itself to the underside of a colossal hive spire, blending in with the pulsating surface. Through the viewport, they could see the drones swarming above like a storm of mechanical locusts. Each was built for a single purpose: find, consume, adapt. Atlas studied their movement patterns with calm intensity. "They're not random," he said. "They're breathing." Ghost led the insertion team through the airlock. Their suits were matte black, coated with adaptive camouflage keyed to Erebus biolight frequencies. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like shadows given form. Titan took point, his exosuit absorbing sound and stabilizing gravitational fluctuations. Cypher remained aboard, fingers dancing across invisible interfaces, forging a hole in the hive's data lattice. One by one, the operatives vanished into the alien structure, becoming whispers within the organism. The hive interior was a nightmare of organic machinery, pulsating corridors, semi-translucent membranes, and flowing rivers of bioluminescent fluid. Every surface seemed to watch. But the team moved like they belonged there. Ghost hacked through sensory nodes without triggering alarms, severing neural lines and rerouting pulses. Atlas led them toward the core's outer shell, a massive neural relay chamber where swarm commands were distributed. "Take it slow," he ordered. "One wrong step and we're history." They reached their first objective, a pulsar-sized node of alien tissue encased in living metal. It throbbed like a heart, sending commands out through luminous veins. Ghost and Cypher worked in tandem, one physically slicing open relay valves, the other injecting quantum scrambling code. Within moments, that node went dark. Across the swarm's perimeter, a section of drones faltered mid-flight, drifting aimlessly. The hive noticed something was wrong, but not where. Atlas activated his comm implant for the first time. "One down," he said. His voice was calm, almost cold. 9 to go. The team didn't cheer. They didn't even respond. This wasn't a victory, it was a heartbeat in a larger war. Above them, the swarm stirred like a wounded giant, unaware that a surgical blade was already inside its veins. 10 men were walking through the apocalypse like they had been here before. The moment the first node went dark, the swarm reacted. The ambient hum of the hive changed pitch, deepening into a sound that resonated through bone and steel alike. Drone patterns shifted from flowing patrols to spiral formations, tightening the perimeter like muscles contracting around a wound. Inside the hive structure, the team felt the change through their boots. The corridors began to move. They felt that, Ghost murmured. Atlas nodded once. Good. Let them start looking in the wrong places. Cypher monitored the neural lattice from the ship. His face was lit by pulsating alien light. They're diverting 70% of their attention to the perimeter. They think something's hitting them from the outside. Titan's voice rumbled through comms. That buys us time. Ghost smirked beneath his helmet. Let them hunt shadows while the real monsters are already inside. For all the galaxy's awe at the swarm, Earth's operatives understood one truth. Even the greatest organism can be distracted. Deeper into the hive they moved, past massive bioreactors where new drones gestated. They looked like metallic cocoons, each pulsing with green light as half-formed creatures twitched inside. This is insane, one of the newer operatives muttered. Atlas didn't turn. Its biology scaled up to war. Every movement was planned. Ghost mapped their route through pulse rhythms. Titan cleared obstacles. Cypher rerouted neural commands to mask their presence. They weren't improvising, they were executing. Their next objective loomed ahead, a command filament cluster. These massive structures transmitted instructions from the core intelligence to the entire swarm. Destroying one would cause chaos across thousands of light years. The problem was the Guardians. Dozens of drone behemoths patrolled the chamber, creatures the size of gunships, armed with plasma lances and neural scanners. Normal armies would have needed fleets to break through. The team had Ghost. He slipped ahead like a wraith. The drones didn't see him. Their sensors couldn't see him. He moved through the pulsating light like ink, flowing through water. With surgical precision, he planted scramblers at the edges of the filament cluster. The devices synced with Cypher's code, creating a blind spot in the hive's neural network. For 43 seconds, this chamber ceased to exist to the swarm. That was all Atlas needed. Titan, he said. Open the door. Titan's rail accelerator roared once, the sound smothered by dampeners. The shot pierced through the filament cluster's support structure, shattering critical nodes. The entire chamber convulsed as energy rippled outward. Drone behemoths spasmed. Their neural links severed in an instant. Ghost detonated his scramblers. The cluster went dark like a light switched off. Across the hive network, chaos bloomed. Thousands of drones received contradictory orders and collided mid-flight. The swarm began to stutter, but the hive wasn't blind, it was adaptive. Cypher's neural HUD flared with red, their shifting scanning frequencies. We've got 3 minutes before they lock our signatures. Atlas responded without hesitation. Then we moved faster. The team sprinted through the collapsing corridors, ghosting through shifting organic machinery. The hive twisted around them like it was trying to heal a wound. Every second, the environment grew more hostile. Drones began swarming toward the disturbance like antibodies converging. The team reached a vertical shaft that stretched for kilometers. Bioluminescent tendrils climbed its walls, pulsing with command signals. This goes straight to the inner shell, Cypher confirmed. But they'll know if we breach it. Atlas glanced at Titan. The big man grinned under his helmet. Then we hit it harder than they can react. He raised his weapon, dialed power to maximum, and fired. The shaft split open with a thunderous crack, biometal folding outward like shattered bone. The path to the core lay ahead. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, panic grew. The swarm had started to hesitate, an impossibility. Something's happening, a delegate gasped. The drones are colliding with each other. Another stammered, who could do this? A silent transmission appeared on the encrypted human channel, progressing to inner shell. No fanfare. No bravado. Just a status report from 10 ghosts rewriting the fate of the galaxy from inside the monster. As the team rappelled down the massive shaft, alarms finally screamed through the hive. They had cut deep enough that the core intelligence noticed. The walls began to shift, closing behind them like a throat-swallowing intruders. Ghost turned mid-descent, planting explosive nodes along the walls to hold the gap open. They're awake now, he said. Atlas didn't look back. Good. I'd hate for this to be too easy. The alarms inside the hive were like nothing human ears were meant to hear. It wasn't just sound. It was vibration, pressure, a living structure screaming through every wall. The shaft around the team twisted violently, tendrils snapping into defensive positions. Swarms of drones poured in from above and below, their movements suddenly precise again. The core intelligence had shifted its attention inward. Contact incoming, Ghost said calmly. Atlas didn't flinch. Form diamond. Titan front. The first wave came like a flood. Hundreds of drones dove down the shaft in perfect formation, their bioplasma weapons lighting up the darkness. Titan's exosuit absorbed the brunt, his railgun thundering in measured bursts. Ghost danced along the walls, planting microcharges and creating choke points. Atlas moved at the center, giving quiet, exact orders, no wasted breath. 2 o'clock cut them off. Ghost sealed the upper path. They weren't reacting. They were directing the battlefield. Cypher's fingers blurred over invisible keys back on the ship. He hijacked local neural channels, inserting false signals to confuse targeting arrays. Drones slammed into each other mid-flight as their own commands turned against them. I can hold their targeting net for 90 seconds, he warned. Then they'll adapt. Atlas's reply was curt. 90's all we need. Titan's armor smoked as plasma splashed against it, but he held the line like a wall of iron. The second wave came from the shaft's walls. Organic hatches split open, and biomechanical crawlers surged out like metallic spiders, clinging to the surfaces and firing in synchronized volleys. Ghost reacted instantly, vaulting upward and laying a line of explosives along the wall. Now! Atlas shouted. The charges detonated, blasting the crawlers free and collapsing half the shaft. For a moment, the entire structure trembled. Titan laughed, a low, brutal sound. They're finally fighting. But the swarm was learning. Cypher's HUD flared red. They're changing their neural frequencies. I can't jam them anymore. Then we move, Atlas barked. The team launched grappling lines and repelled the remaining distance at breakneck speed. Above them, the drones regrouped, forming a spiraling funnel of plasma fire. One misstep and they'd be vaporized. Titan cut through a collapsing tendon, swinging down like a wrecking ball. Ghost followed, flipping through narrow gaps with impossible precision. They reached the bottom of the shaft and burst into the inner shell access chamber. It was vast, an open biomechanical dome glowing with sickly green light. Tendrils connected to every wall, pulsing with energy from the core. Dozens of Guardian drones hovered in perfect silence, waiting. Atlas raised his fist and the team froze. This is their kill box, Ghost whispered. Exactly, Atlas replied. Let's make it theirs. The Guardians attacked in eerie unison, their plasma beams converging in a deadly lattice. Atlas gave the signal. Ghost flickered out of visibility, disrupting the firing pattern. Titan charged head-on, absorbing fire as his armor plates glowed white-hot. Behind him, the others executed coordinated strikes. EMP grenades laced with alien biocodes, rail slugs aimed at tendon-like support beams, precision charges thrown at vulnerable nodes. The hive was their enemy's fortress, but it was also their weapon. Cypher unleashed a data spike into the chamber's neural lattice, sending a false command that told the Guardians to stand down. For a split second they hesitated. That was all Ghost needed. He reappeared behind their flank, detonating synchronized charges that tore through their ranks. Titan swept through the survivors like a battering ram, his railgun roaring. The kill box turned into a storm of explosions, collapsing in on itself. The chamber fell silent but for the hiss of cooling armor and the distant rumble of the hive shifting. The team reloaded, regrouped, and advanced toward a massive pulsating door at the far end. Beyond it lay the inner shell, the neural heart of the swarm. Atlas looked at each man in turn. No words were needed. They'd all known from the start. Once they crossed this threshold, retreat was off the table. Above them, the hive finally understood. Across the galaxy, swarm fleets paused mid-flight. Drones faltered, recalculated, and then redirected enormous processing power inward. The organism had found its infection. 10 human operatives had forced an intelligence spanning thousands of systems to focus everything on a single point. And that was exactly what Earth wanted. The moment the team crossed the threshold into the Nexus chamber, the hive reacted with terrifying precision. The swirling core pulsed once and the entire room came alive. The walls rippled like muscle tissue under stress. Floors shifted like tectonic plates, and neural tendrils lashed through the air with whip-crack speed. Titan threw himself forward, absorbing the first barrage, his armor lighting up like a forge. "It's awake," Ghost muttered. Atlas's voice was steady. "Then so are we." Cypher's interface lit up like a storm. "It's scanning every frequency. I'm blocking what I can, but this thing is rewriting its neural structure in real time." Atlas moved through the chaos like a chess master, issuing short, sharp orders. Ghost left flank. Titan centerline pressure. Echo team prep charges. The Nexus didn't fight like drones. It anticipated. Tendrils struck from blind angles, predicting trajectories. Ghost dodged by milliseconds, slicing through neural conduits with surgical precision. The team deployed gravity anchors to stabilize their footing as the chamber twisted like a living storm. Energy pulses erupted from the core, sending shockwaves that cracked plating and knocked men to the ground. Titan braced himself like a mountain, anchoring the formation while others repositioned. Cypher unleashed counter-signals, bursts of falsified data designed to overload the core's sensory inputs. "It's buying us seconds," he gritted. Atlas nodded. "Seconds are everything." Guardian constructs poured in from secondary tunnels, bipedal horrors with glowing spines and limbs that reshaped mid-attack. "Incoming rear sectors," Ghost called out. Atlas didn't even turn. "Lock them down." Titan unleashed his railgun at full auto, each slug punching holes through their adaptive bodies. Ghost vaulted from wall to wall, cutting neural links before the Guardians could coordinate. Explosions lit up the chamber like a storm at sea. But still the core learned. Cypher's HUD filled with shifting equations, alien patterns that changed faster than human processing speed. "It's not just defending," he said. "It's studying us." Atlas's reply was ice cold. "Then give it something worth studying." He ordered a feint maneuver. Ghost and Titan pushed forward aggressively, while the rest of the team planted breaching charges in the chamber's support nodes. The Nexus responded exactly as predicted, focusing its tendrils on the feint. The trap was set. The charges detonated simultaneously, blowing out segments of the Nexus chamber's stabilizing structure. The entire room lurched as energy flows destabilized. Tendrils flailed wildly, striking their own walls. Cypher flooded the core's network with corrupted command loops, forcing it to redirect precious processing power to damage control. "We've got its balance off," Marcus said. Atlas raised his weapon. "Push." They advanced as one unit, carving through Guardian constructs while explosions painted the chamber in flickering light. Titan grabbed a tendril mid-swing and snapped it like a cable, his armor hissing under strain. Ghost infiltrated the upper layers of the Nexus, planting data scramblers directly into neural conduits. Every strike wasn't random. It was calculated to cut communication pathways, blind reaction nodes, and weaken the core's ability to coordinate its galaxy-spanning network. The Nexus responded by flooding the chamber with a blinding psychic pulse. Every man staggered as the air seemed to thicken with alien thought. Images, not their own, flashed through their minds. Burning stars devoured worlds, the feeling of inevitability. The Hive was trying to break them. Titan roared through the mental fog, anchoring the team's morale with sheer will. Cypher countered by spiking their neural implants with grounding protocols. "Stay sharp!" Atlas barked. "It bleeds like anything else." For the first time, the swarm's galactic fleets hesitated. Across the galaxy, drones wavered mid-maneuver. Hive formations lost cohesion as the intelligence diverted its full focus inward. On council worlds, commanders stared at their tactical maps in disbelief. "What are they doing to it?" one asked. Earth's envoy answered with a single sentence: "They're fighting its mind." Amid the chaos, Atlas reached the center platform, a pulsating bridge of bone and metal extending to the swirling core. Tendrils crashed around him, Guardians surged, and the chamber quaked. But he walked with purpose, each step cutting through centuries of fear built around this creature. Over the comms, his voice was low, steady, unshakable. "We didn't come to survive," he said. "We came to end this." The Nexus changed. One moment it was a storm of tendrils and Guardians, predictable in its physical fury. The next, the entire chamber went eerily still. The swirling core pulsed once, slow, deliberate, and a wave of psychic force rolled outward like a silent explosion. Every man staggered, not from impact but from invasion. Memories, fears, and thoughts not their own surged through their minds. The Hive had stopped fighting their bodies. Now it was attacking their minds. Atlas felt it first. A vision flashed across his neural implant. Earth burning under black skies, the Erebus swarm descending without resistance, humanity kneeling before a mechanical god. He clenched his jaw and forced the image away. Beside him, Ghost stumbled, his breathing ragged. "It's inside," he hissed. Cypher's voice crackled through comms strained. "The Nexus has opened a cognitive assault vector. It's reading us and rewriting what we see." The chamber warped visually. The walls shifted into familiar shapes, childhood streets, loved ones, lost comrades, then melted into grotesque alien structures. Titan roared as a hallucinated swarm of enemies rushed him, slamming his fists into walls that weren't there. "It's weaponizing memory," Cypher growled. He flooded their implants with counter-patterns, static pulses designed to drown out invasive signals. "I can hold it back for a minute, maybe less," he warned. "After that, we're on our own." The Guardians returned, but now their movements were disorienting, overlaid with shifting illusions. A friend's face would appear where an enemy stood. Corridors twisted into mazes that didn't exist. Ghost nearly struck one of his teammates before pulling back at the last second. "So they're trying to make us kill each other," he spat. Atlas raised his voice above the chaos, calm and commanding. "Anchor to the mission. Ignore everything else. You see something real, it bleeds. You see something false, it whispers." Cypher rerouted his entire focus into stabilizing neural links, connecting the team's implants in a closed loop. "If one falls, we all hold him," he said through gritted teeth. Their shared link became their lifeline, a human neural network fighting back against an alien godmind. The Nexus intensified its assault, flooding their senses with impossible images. Dead worlds, endless defeat, loved ones begging them to turn back. But the team had been trained for this. Earth didn't send men who could break. Ghost adapted first. He shut down his visual feed entirely, switching to sonar and tactile mapping. "Can't trick eyes that aren't watching," he muttered, cutting through neural conduits with eerie precision. Titan followed, relying on raw instinct and exosuit telemetry. Cypher maintained the shared loop, filtering out 90% of the psychic noise. Atlas stood at the center, voice unwavering. Focus on each other. Not on the lies. The Nexus grew desperate. The illusions shifted from fear to temptation. It showed each man what he desired most. Peace, victory without bloodshed, home. Titan froze as he saw his daughter running toward him across a sunlit field, something he hadn't seen in years. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Ghost's voice cut through. "She's not here, brother." "Keep walking." Titan roared and smashed through the hallucination, shattering it like glass. Cypher's system screamed under the mental pressure. "It's trying to overwrite our neural patterns," he shouted. "It wants to make us part of it." The team closed ranks, their movements synchronized like clockwork. Every strike, every maneuver was guided by shared awareness, rather than sight. They advanced through the storm of illusions, carving their way toward the pulsing core. The Hive had spent millennia mastering fear. Humanity had spent just as long defying it. For the first time, the Nexus faltered. Its psychic assault hit a wall it couldn't penetrate. Shared human will, sharpened by war and trust. Cypher's voice steadied. "It's pulling back. It doesn't understand unity." Ghost smiled grimly beneath his mask. "That's because it's never fought humans before." Titan leveled his railgun at the core, the hallucinations melting away like fog. "Time to stop whispering," he growled. "Time to make it scream." Atlas raised his hand, signaling the final breach. Around them, the chamber convulsed as the Nexus realized brute force and deception had both failed. Across the galaxy, swarm fleets froze mid-maneuver as their god-mind wavered. Alien commanders watched in disbelief as an empire of instinct faltered before 10 human minds bound together by choice. Atlas's voice came over comms, low and certain. "Phase 3 ended. The Nexus abandoned subtlety. Its psychic storm faded like a receding tide, leaving only the sound of the chamber's deep, thrumming heartbeat. Then the core pulsed once, massive, deliberate, and the entire structure shifted. The floor split into segments, the ceiling descended like a cage, and the walls folded inward to reveal colossal biomechanical engines buried beneath. "Oh, that's new," Ghost muttered. Titan grinned, cracking his neck. "Finally, it's getting serious." Cypher's HUD went blood red. "Atlas, it's triggering an internal defense cascade. Energy build-up in the substructure is off the charts." Atlas didn't blink. Translation: it's about to turn this room into a star. The Nexus had activated a failsafe, an implosion protocol designed to collapse the chamber and everything inside it into a hyper-dense singularity, severing its own neural limb rather than let it fall. "We've got 8 minutes," Cypher said. "After that, there's nothing left to fight." Massive armored shutters closed behind them, sealing every exit. Guardian constructs reformed out of the walls themselves, larger and faster than before. These weren't scouts. They were executioners. Their frames burned with internal light as plasma coursed through their limbs. Titan stepped forward without hesitation. "I've got point," Atlas nodded. "Ghost, flank. Echo team, find that core and prep the package. We end this here or not at all." The chamber erupted into war. Titan's railgun thundered, tearing through Guardian ranks. But for every one that fell, 2 more emerged from the writhing walls. Ghost became a blur, weaving through tendrils and slicing neural nodes with surgical brutality. Cypher poured every ounce of processing power into intercepting command loops, turning Guardian formations against each other wherever possible. 7 minutes, he warned. Atlas's voice remained a rock. "Keep moving." Explosions painted the Nexus chamber in searing light. Guardians adapted mid-fight, reshaping limbs into energy cannons and melee weapons. Titan waded through them like a human avalanche, his armor glowing white-hot under the barrage. Ghost climbed onto the ceiling, planting EMP charges in key neural junctions. Each detonation crippled parts of the chamber, buying precious seconds. Echo team moved like shadows, laying the payload, a device designed not to destroy the Nexus outright, but to sever its galactic connection. The Nexus core thrashed like a wounded beast, tendrils slamming into the floor and walls, creating shockwaves that sent men flying. Cypher barely kept the formation intact, rerouting comlinks through backup channels as neural interference grew overwhelming. Titan was knocked to one knee by a direct plasma blast. Ghost landed beside him, detonating charges in perfect timing to cover his recovery. 6 minutes, Cypher barked. "We're running out of time." Atlas climbed the central bridge toward the swirling core, dodging tendrils that moved like living lightning. He carried the trigger unit in one hand, his rifle in the other. Guardians swarmed the bridge, but the team formed a moving perimeter, fighting up the incline in brutal close-quarters combat. Titan led with sheer force. Ghost flowed around him, cutting through openings he created. Every step forward was earned in blood and precision. "This is it," Atlas growled. "No fallback." The core reacted violently, pulling energy inward as the implosion protocol neared critical mass. The chamber's edges began to collapse into spiraling vortices, dragging wreckage and shattered drones toward the center. 5 minutes, Cypher shouted. Gravity spikes rising. The battlefield distorted. Shots curved mid-air. Debris flew like shrapnel. Titan anchored himself to the bridge with magnetic clamps, roaring defiance as Guardians threw themselves at him in suicidal waves. Amid the chaos, Ghost reached the upper neural spine and jammed a spike directly into the Nexus's command node. "Cypher link is open," he yelled. Cypher's fingers blurred. He hijacked the Nexus's countdown protocols, inserting human override codes like knives into alien thought. "I can hold it," he gritted. "But you've got to plant the package now." Atlas sprinted through the maelstrom, leaping over collapsing walkways, every tendon in the chamber straining to stop him. He didn't slow. As the clock ticked down, the team closed ranks around the core's heart. Plasma fire, neural lashes, gravitational storms, all of it converged on 10 humans who refused to yield. 3 minutes! Cypher screamed. Atlas jammed the payload into the core's connective base, locking it into place. For a heartbeat, the chamber froze, as if the Nexus itself realized what they'd done. Titan slammed another Guardian off the bridge. Ghost exhaled slowly. Now it screams. The Nexus chamber howled as the payload locked into place. It wasn't a sound through the air. It was transmitted through the walls, through their bones, through the fabric of the hive itself. The core knew what was happening. Tendrils thrashed like enraged serpents, slamming into the bridge with enough force to twist steel. Guardian constructs abandoned formation entirely, throwing themselves at the humans in a suicidal frenzy. 2 minutes! Cypher shouted, sweat dripping down his face as he held the override in place. Atlas slammed his rifle into the magnetic clamps beside the payload and pulled out the detonator. The device was simple by human standards, but to the hive it was alien. It wasn't designed to destroy the core, but to disconnect it from its galactic neural web, severing its control over trillions of drones. Titan stood beside him like an iron pillar, armor scorched and cracked, railgun overheating but still firing. Ghost was everywhere at once, intercepting tendrils, cutting command lines, buying seconds they didn't have. The chamber continued to collapse. Gravity wells intensified, pulling everything toward the swirling center. Huge slabs of biomechanical plating tore free and spun through the air like blades. Titan anchored himself to the bridge, catching Ghost mid-fall as a vortex nearly swallowed him. "You're not dying before the finale," Titan grunted. Ghost laughed, breathless. Wouldn't dream of it. Behind them, Echo Team struggled to hold the perimeter. Every shot counted, every movement precise. They were past tactics now. This was pure survival. Cypher's voice strained over comms. The Core's fighting me. It's rerouting subroutines faster than I can block them. Atlas didn't hesitate. Then overloaded. Cypher paused. You'll lose your uplink. You'll be flying blind. Atlas's answer was ice. Do it. Cypher cut his connection to the Nexus network and dumped a cascade of corrupted code into the Core's control systems. It screamed, not physically, but across their implants. A psychic shriek that almost knocked them all to their knees, one by one. The Nexus's guardian constructs began to convulse, their bodies twisting unnaturally as the code disrupted their coordination. Some exploded mid-charge. Others froze in place like statues. But the Core itself was far from done. A massive tendril erupted from the swirling heart, slamming down on the bridge and splintering it down the middle. Titan held the line, his feet magnetized, railgun roaring. Atlas was thrown sideways, catching a support cable with one hand as gravity surged unpredictably. 60 seconds, Cypher yelled. Alarms blared across every suit. The singularity implosion was nearing critical mass. The Nexus was willing to destroy itself to stop them. Ghost sprinted along the fractured bridge, planting his last charges on the tendril bases to clear the final path. You're cutting it close, Atlas, he quipped through clenched teeth. Atlas didn't answer. He was climbing hand over hand toward the detonator, gravity and fury clawing at him like a storm. The Core lashed out again, faster than before. A tendril impaled one of the Echo Team operatives through the chest, yanking him into the air. He didn't scream. He simply triggered his suit's self-destruct, taking 3 Guardians with him in a blinding flash. The team didn't falter. There was no time for grief, no space for hesitation. 30 seconds, Cypher barked. Titan bellowed, blasting the tendril apart before it could reach anyone else. Ghost covered Atlas's final ascent, blades flashing like lightning. Atlas reached the detonator with seconds to spare. The payload's display blinked rapidly, awaiting final authorization. The Nexus thrashed around him, reality itself bending as gravity peaked. Cypher's voice was calm now, almost reverent. 20 seconds. Atlas placed his hand on the trigger. Ghost, he said softly. Get everyone clear. Ghost froze. And leave you? Atlas met his gaze through the smoke and fire. We all knew how this ends. Titan's voice rumbled like distant thunder. So you pull that trigger, you're not getting out. Atlas's eyes were steady. Doesn't matter. What matters is that it doesn't get out. Ghost grabbed his arm. There's another way. No, Atlas cut him off. There's only this way. He pushed Ghost toward the evac line. Lead them out. That's an order. For a heartbeat, the world slowed. The hive's thrashing blurred into the background. 10 men had walked into the mouth of the galaxy's greatest threat. One would stay to shut its mouth forever. 10 seconds. Cypher screamed. Ghost clenched his jaw, then turned and sprinted, dragging Titan with him. The team leapt from the collapsing bridge toward the evac route, Ghost planting timed charges to buy a few more seconds. Atlas stood alone before the Core, detonator in hand. Gravity tearing at his armor, tendrils closing in like the hands of a god. He looked at the swirling mass and said, quietly but clearly, You should have picked a different galaxy. Atlas stood alone on the shattered bridge as the Nexus Core thrashed around him like a wounded star. Gravity spiked, dragging wreckage into swirling vortices. Tendrils snapped and writhed, closing in from all directions. He could feel the hive's presence pressing against his mind, cold, vast, and desperate. It was no longer the calm predator that had devoured galaxies. It was an animal cornered for the first time. Atlas gripped the detonator tighter. End of the line, he whispered. Ghost's voice crackled faintly through the static. Atlas, say something. There was a pause. You'll owe me a drink, Atlas replied, his voice steady. Make sure the galaxy remembers why it still has stars. Titan growled over the comm, trying to climb back. You stubborn bastard. Go! Atlas cut him off. His tone wasn't harsh. It was final. Commanding. Titan froze mid-struggle. He understood. Everyone did. Atlas turned his eyes back to the swirling core. You've eaten enough. The Nexus unleashed everything. A dozen tendrils lunged simultaneously, tearing through the bridge. Atlas moved like he had trained for this moment his entire life. He dodged, slid, fired, and cut, his movements sharp and purposeful. A tendril clipped his leg, spinning him toward the edge. He caught the detonator in midair, slammed a mag clamp onto the deck, and hauled himself upright against gravity that felt like a collapsing star. The countdown on the payload blinked red, 0005. Across the galaxy, fleets faltered. Hive drones froze mid-formation, awaiting commands that weren't coming. Council worlds stared at silent tactical feeds. Earth's command centers were quiet. Every sensor, every relay, every listening post focused on one point, the heart of the swarm. Cypher's voice was barely a whisper. He's really doing it. Ghost closed his eyes for a split second, forcing himself forward, dragging Titan toward the evac corridor. He's Atlas, he muttered. He carries the world. Atlas slammed his hand down on the detonator. The payload activated. A surge of human-engineered energy pierced the Nexus core, threading through its neural lattice like a scalpel. For a heartbeat, the hive froze completely. Then the connection snapped. Across thousands of star systems, the Erebus swarm convulsed as its godmind was severed. Drone fleets went dark. Guardians fell from the skies. Hive ships drifted aimlessly. The galaxy's greatest threat was cut off from itself, not destroyed but silenced. The Nexus screamed. It wasn't sound, it was thought, raw and furious. Tendrils lashed in wild, chaotic fury. Atlas was lifted off his feet as the gravity implosion reached its peak. He stared into the swirling heart of the beast, unflinching. "For Earth," he said quietly. Then the chamber collapsed. The bridge, the core, the Guardians, everything was drawn into the singularity, crushed beneath the weight of its own power. The signal cut out mid-sentence. And then there was silence. Outside, Ghost and the remaining operatives burst through the hive corridors as the structure folded inward like a dying star. Their ship ignited its engines and tore away from the collapsing core, gravitational waves clawing at its hull. Titan braced against the airlock door, holding it shut as pressure fluctuated. Cypher rerouted all power to the drives. "Punch it!" Ghost roared. The ship streaked out of the hive's collapsing edge a split second before the singularity sealed behind them. Across the galaxy, a new sound echoed. Nothing. The hive fleets, once a storm of relentless death, floated powerless. For the first time in centuries, the stars were quiet. On council worlds, cheers erupted like tidal waves. Entire species watched in disbelief as the maps cleared. Earth's envoy stood, face calm but eyes blazing. 10 men, he said simply. 10. The galaxy would tell the story 1,000 ways, but the fact would never change. The swarm fell because of them. Ghost stared at the stars from the viewport, his face half lit by starlight. Titan stood beside him, silent. Cypher sat slumped in his chair, exhausted but alive. "He did it," Ghost whispered. Titan rumbled softly. He always does. Behind them, the hive's collapsing remnants vanished into the dark, leaving nothing but drifting silence. 10 had entered, 9 had returned, and the galaxy would never forget the one who stayed. Atlas's name became legend, not through monuments or songs, but through every star that continued to burn. Civilizations rebuilt. The swarm was gone, and somewhere in the quiet between galaxies, humanity's message lingered. We are not infinite, but we are enough.